Page 10. Recapping yesterday, Marty just got called a slacker, and then his dad was called a slacker too. How does he respond? Let's find out, shall we?
If Strickland had been a contemporary, Marty would have thrown back an angry retort. That, of course, was impossible under the circumstances, so he merely looked away.
Bam. I actually kinda like how we see thematically appropriate time-based language used here when considering Strickland as a contemporary. But I'm not sure if it was intentional. Screw it. Let's say it was. Awesome. Anyway, Marty doesn't retort angrily or otherwise, but instead says,
"Excuse me, I'm late for class."
Which is actually kind of badass. Strickland says,
"I didn't excuse you, McFly,"
and grabs him by the elbow hard enough that Marty drops his books, and they all fall on the floor. And remember how he was listening to music in class? And he hid it in one of his hollowed-out books. Uh-oh, what happens?
The illicit unit slid tantalizingly across the waxed tile in slow motion.
Oh okay, haha, awkward. Strickland sees this and gives Marty detention for 1 week, according to, he says, the rules. Yes sir, Marty says. Starting today. Strickland says. Here Marty gasps.
But I can't. Me and my band have an audition for the YMCA dance, Mr. Strickland. I have to be there at 4 o'clock.
Let us note that the boring old YMCA dance would eventually be changed to the more rad Battle of the Bands at some point, and we're all better for it. In the movie, the first Strickland, Marty scene ends with Strickland saying this.
I notice your band is on the roster for the dance auditions after school today. Why even bother, McFly? You don't have a chance. You're too much like your old man. No McFly ever amounted to anything in the history of Hill Valley.
Yeah, well, history is going to change.
I love this exchange, because Strickland here is being jerky, not dickweed, just jerky. Sorry if I can't say dickweed on Tumblr. I never found out if I can say dickweed on Tumblr, but also says the wham line of no McFly ever amounted. Which we all remember because it was awesome. And it sets up Marty for his awesome, foreshadowy reply. I rate this conversation 5 out of 5 gigawatts. It's so awesome, someone made it in picture form. I found this online while searching for Mr. Strickland pictures, my hobby. This is how our book Strickland, Marty scene ends.
One might as well have tried begging a shark to seek food elsewhere. Through rheumy eyes spiked with malicious glee, Strickland stared unflinchingly at his victim. Then, with a curt wave of his hand, he began to turn away. "An audition, huh?" he said. "Well, McFly, it looks like you just blew it."
Rheumy eyes? Our Mr. Strickland? Rheum, from Greek rheuma, is thin mucus naturally discharged as a watery substance from the eyes. Wikipedia. In case you were wondering, I rate this conversation 0 out of a possible 55 gigawatts. Pages 11-12. So Marty shows up for detention at 3:42 sharp, wondering if he has
offended the local deity governing the fates of Hill Valley High School students.
Because everything's going so wrong. Even his Walkman stereo got dropped and Mr. Strickland took it, or at least that's what was implied. His plan is to skip detention and say he was confused about when it started, but decides to drop by to see which teacher is in charge of detention, and who should be the butt. You guessed it, it's Mr. Strickland. Oh snap.
His piercing eyes honed in on Marty, like enemy radar.
They were roomy a paragraph ago, but now they're piercing. Mr. Strickland, a study in contrasts. We get a paragraph of description of the detention room.
A typical classroom in the school which had been built at the end of the Great Depression. Green blackboards had replaced the old black types, and the walls, desks and ceiling had been repainted.
Blah blah blah. Also there's a sprinkler system. This had better be set up for the being black blackboards and different colored walls back in 1955, because if not I am gonna be cheesed. Marty finds the place depressing, and
The expressions on the faces of the 10 other students enduring punishment indicated that they regarded the place with equal misery.
He recognizes one of them, Wheeze, and here is a true fact: if you don't have a nickname yet, then I'm calling you Wheeze from now on. Don't even bother thanking me. I understand. Wheeze has his skateboard hidden beneath his books, almost like he expects Mr. Strickland to destroy it. But, why would he? Oh wait, what's happening now? Mr. Strickland smiles sadistically, Gipe's words, and says,
"Now we are going to see how we deal with those who violate our no Walkman rule." He's got 10 Walkman units lined on the desk next to him, and gently, almost reverentially, he lifted one of the units and placed it in the jaws of a woodworking vise mounted on the corner of the desk. He then began tightening the jaws until the set broke in half, the sound approximating that of bones breaking. As bits of plastic and mangled parts trickled to the floor, one student winced as if the pain were being inflicted on his body. Strickland, well aware of which unit belonged to each student, smiled wickedly at the horrified young man.
"Rip, Walkman unit. Wait, this page isn't done yet."
With gleeful deliberation, Strickland continued the crunching orgy.
Okay, the page is done now.